This is The World This Weekend. Good evening, I'm James Murray. Tonight, another firefighter has died battling one of the wildfires during scorching temperatures.
I'm sure in 2 weeks somebody will be announcing that this was the warmest July in recorded history of 150 years. We've already had the warmest week.
Also tonight, how Canadians working in film and television here will be impacted by the strikes in Hollywood.
I've talked to a lot of our members. On the one hand, they support the strike, but this is a bigger storm than most people are prepared to weather financially.
And Wimbledon crowns a new champion, King Carlos.
Carlos Alcaraz is the special one to dethrone Djokovic at Wimbledon.
That's later, but first we begin with the tragic news from the Northwest Territories. A firefighter has died from an injury sustained from battling a fire in the Fort Lear district. The death marks the second firefighter killed on the front line this week, and it comes as this year's record-breaking wildfire season shows no sign of slowing down. The CBC's Georgie Smythe has more.
Everyone in the territory is going to be mourning the loss of this firefighter.
A male firefighter who died Saturday afternoon in Fort Lear is yet to be formally named. What we do know is the impact of his death is immense. Here's Jessica Davey-Quantick, a wildfire information officer from Yellowknife.
I mean, landmass were huge, but when it comes to community, it's very interconnected and interwoven.
Davey-Quantick says many firefighters in the territory end up defending their own communities. She says this man died from an injury while trying to protect Fort Lear, which sits near the borders of Yukon and BC.
This was a fire that had been burning in the Deitcho region of the territory since July 7th. It was one of the ones that we are keeping an eye on and monitoring.
Like most places around the country, it's been an unusually intense wildfire season there.
We've had multiple communities evacuated already, which is quite rare. In the 4 years I've been working on the NWT fire phone, we've never had even one community evacuated.
It's the second fatality on the wildfire front in 3 days after 19-year-old firefighter Devon Gale from Revelstoke in BC died on Thursday, killed by a falling tree. It's been an exhausting few months for firefighters. This weekend, evacuation orders swept across BC as the number of large fires grew from 17 to 20. Most fires are burning in regions of the central interior. Mark Parker is the chair of the regional district there.
You can drive down the highway in certain areas and you're driving along the highway and there's fires within 600-700 yards of the highway. You can see flames.
Drought is partly to blame for the ferocity of these fires, something John Richardson studies at the University of British Columbia. We're on the edge of Pacific Spirit Park in Vancouver, looking at parts of a bog and rainforest that have turned dry and brown with no rain.
Any of these things could ignite fairly easily, given a concerted source of ignition, like a lightning strike and something like that. So once they get going, there's a lot of fuel and it'll flow up the branches up into the crown of the tree, and once it gets going and all the trees get involved, it's really hard to put it out, and so that's why fires go out of control.
BC might see some rain this week, but it's unlikely to be enough. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
There is no escaping the extreme weather in the United States. Flash flooding in the Northeast has killed at least 5 people. Wildfires in the Southwest have forced homes to be evacuated, while intense heat is breaking records across the country. The CBC's Katie Simpson reports from Washington.
Emergency crews unload gear, small boats, paddles, and life preservers along a rural road near a creek in northeastern Pennsylvania. An urgent recovery effort presses forward after flash flooding washed away multiple vehicles Saturday afternoon.
In my 44 years, I've never seen anything like it.
The local fire chief, Tim Brewer, says in addition to those killed, several more are missing.
Tragically, we are looking for 2 children from the same family. One boy who is 9 months, one female who's his older sister who is 2.
The U.S. Northeast has been pummeled by rain for days, with deadly floods destroying homes and businesses, causing as much as $5 billion in damages so far.
Bro, I just watched my car just swim away.
Right now, some 55 million people live in areas where flood alerts are in effect. Travel has been upended, with storms forcing thousands of flight cancellations and delays. On the other side of the country, extreme conditions pose a completely different set of challenges.
It feels like if hot sauce could be felt without you having to taste it, and it got poured on my back.
More than 100 different heat-related temperature records are expected to be broken by the time this weekend is over, with heat alerts in effect for some 80 million people. Phoenix, Arizona has gone 16 straight days with temperatures over 43 degrees Celsius. It's making outdoor surfaces dangerous. Some parents, including Emily Glitz, are keeping kids out of playgrounds.
It's too hot. Physically, they'll burn their skin trying to get on any of the equipment.
Further west in Death Valley, California, Park Ranger Matthew Lamar says temperatures there will not only be the hottest in the country, but the hottest on the entire planet.
This could potentially be the third time in the last 4 years we hit 130.
130 degrees Fahrenheit is about 54 degrees Celsius. The hot, dry conditions are making it harder for first responders to contain wildfires. About 1,000 homes in Southern California have been evacuated, with more expected in the days ahead. There isn't much help in the forecast. Some coastal communities will see temperatures drop slightly in the week ahead, but the intense heat is sticking around for the vast majority of the South and Southwest. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
9 bodies have been recovered from an underpass in Cheongju, South Korea, after severe flooding from torrential rains trapped vehicles inside. Rescuers use machines to pump water from under the tunnel as they search for missing people. Another 9 people were rescued from the site on Saturday. Local authorities say the tunnel flooded in under 3 minutes. The victims were found inside a bus that submerged in the underpass. Throughout South Korea, nearly 40 people have died due to flooding, and nearly 9,000 people have been forced from their homes. Some areas have seen more than 60 centimeters of rain since July 9th, with more rain expected in the coming days. Quebec police say 1 person is dead, another in critical condition, after the gondola they were in crashed at the popular Mont Tremblant resort. Police say a piece of construction machinery struck the gondola. We have more details from the CBC's Sarah Levitt at the resort tonight.
At the base of Mont Tremblant, tourists continue to stop and look towards the summit. Panoramic gondolas meant to view the beauty of the mountain stretch all the way up. What's unseen is the tragedy that happened here this morning around 11:30. Sergeant Eric Cadot is with provincial police.
Emergency services were dispatched here concerning a collision between a vehicle and a gondola. It was a construction vehicle, and at the force of the impact, 2 persons were projected outside of the gondola. They fell several meters and hit the ground very hard.
Both were transported to hospital, where the death of one was confirmed. The other person remains in critical condition. The mountain is a popular tourist destination, as popular in the summer as the winter. Since the accident, all gondolas were immediately stopped. It took some time before those in other cabins were evacuated, as the mountain worked to ensure the security of the system. Tonight was meant to be the last night of the annual Blues Festival. That has been canceled. Now, police are on site to investigate just how this happened. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Mont Tremblant, Quebec.
A 17th person has died as the result of last month's bus crash in rural Manitoba. The 79-year-old woman had been in hospital since mid-June. 25 people from around Dauphin were on board the bus at the time of the crash. They were on an outing to a casino just south of Carberry. A pair of Hollywood strikes is sending ripples through Hollywood North. Around 250,000 Canadians work in the film and TV industries. With writers and actors on picket lines, productions will be postponed or canceled, and star-studded events like film festivals will be dimmer than usual. Furkan Khan now on the Canadian film workers, how they are preparing for what could be months of job insecurity.
So if this all comes to a halt and shuts down, might have to go to the food banks.
Gergely Kapouche is a storyboard artist based in Toronto. He has worked with shows like Star Trek Discovery and The Boys.
We have engaged the Klingons.
He says the dual strikes in Hollywood are already being felt in Canada. And writers and actors are not the only ones affected.
I guess what you'd call the bottom line, anyone from carpenters, cameramen, PAs, you name it.
Since May, the Writers Guild of America has been on strike, and last week the actors joined in, grinding the Hollywood machine to a halt. Duncan Crabtree Ireland is SAG-AFTRA's chief negotiator.
Actors deserve a contract that reflects the changes that have taken place in the industry.
Canadian cities are a popular destination for Hollywood productions, employing tens of thousands of people across the country. From the most recent Ghostbusters movie,
there hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years,
to HBO's The Last of Us.
I'm not family.
No. You're cargo.
Both filmed in Alberta.
We have one project currently.
Damien Petty is the president of IATSE 212, a union that represents film and theatre crew in Calgary. He says the union's members are torn over the strikes.
I've talked to a lot of our members, and it's really a bittersweet thing because on the one hand, they support the strike, but this is a bigger storm than most people are prepared to weather financially.
The strikes aren't just halting productions. Actors are also not allowed to promote their work while striking. At the premiere of Disney's Haunted Mansion, paparazzi had to snap photos of amusement park performers dressed as Disney villains instead of the movie stars. A possible preview for this September's Toronto International Film Festival, which relies on star-studded premieres to draw in thousands of people each year.
Thank you for the solidarity.
Strikers are demanding contracts that reflect the changing industry, like streaming, which has changed how writers and actors get paid or how long they're employed. Another major sticking point for the strikers is artificial intelligence. Gerge Kapush says while his job is still safe, AI has already replaced some jobs.
I know that a lot of concept artists have lost their jobs already because concept art is something that the AI can mimic really well and very quickly.
The Actors Guild is negotiating their demands currently while the writers continue to strike without much progress, making for an uncertain future for workers in Hollywood North. Furqan Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
For firefighters, the most deadly occupational hazard is neither flames, nor smoke, nor falling debris. It's cancer. But Canadian firefighters have unequal access to workplace compensation for cancer treatment, depending on where they live. Kate McKenna now on the firefighters and lawmakers who are trying to change that.
When you have the diagnosis and you said, oh, it's not, how long am I going to live?
20 years into his firefighting career, Jean-François Couture learned he has an incurable cancer.
So I was thinking a lot of my children, and I said, you know what? I'll try to do my best and fight against it.
The Quebec resident made it his mission to educate on cancer prevention in firefighters. He learned that provincial workplace health and safety boards don't link the same number of cancers to firefighting, meaning some firefighters could struggle to get compensation because of where they live. Now he can say he's inspired a new federal law.
So I take a small credit of it, but Sherry did all the work.
Sherry is Sherry Romanato. She's a Quebec member of Parliament.
I started looking into it and realized that there really was a huge discrepancy across provinces.
The numbers do range significantly. Quebec only automatically offers compensation for 9 types of cancer in firefighters. In Alberta, the number is 20.
And most people didn't know. But not only in terms of the discrepancy across provinces, but if you don't know which cancers can be caused by what you're doing, you can't prevent them.
Romanato introduced a private member's bill which passed into law a few weeks ago.
I declare the motion carried.
The federal government can't force provinces to compensate or recognize more types of cancer, but the law will create a national framework for the prevention of cancer in firefighters, and it'll help share the same research across the country, so every province's workplace compensation board has the same information. Both Quebec and New Brunswick have already said they're open to learning more and potentially covering more types of cancer.
Firefighters couldn't be more pleased.
The International Association of Firefighters says this is an important step. Neil McMillan is the organization's Director of Science and Research.
To have this inequity of coverage for firefighters when they get diagnosed with those illnesses associated with those carcinogens is a real disservice, to those that, serve the community in that capacity.
He says cancer is a serious risk.
Because it's the #1 killer of firefighters. In Canada, 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty deaths are attributable to cancer. 95% of our line of duty
He says the intensity and frequency of recent fires increases the risk of exposure to cancer-causing chemicals. He hopes the sharing of research leads to prevention in the long run. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Imran Khan says another arrest is likely imminent. The former Prime Minister of Pakistan is facing nearly 200 charges ranging from sedition to corruption, and his political party, PTI, faces banishment. Khan was removed from power in 2022, and he was arrested in May, leading to protests across Pakistan. Khan told the National's Ian Hannamansingh he believes the charges are a ploy to keep him from running in a general election this fall.
In the past, whenever we've had a government falling and the Prime Minister goes into the opposition, normally they leave the country. I mean, the two Prime Ministers, Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif, the moment they were out of power, they left the country two times. So this is the only time that the ex-Prime Minister is not leaving the country. And it's because I believe that whenever these cases go on trial, I'll be proved right. I mean, these are bogus cases. The reason why they are piling up these cases is because of the elections coming up. And what they hope is that they would get a conviction in one of the cases, and I will go into appeal to the Supreme Court, but meanwhile the elections will be over and I would be disqualified. So this is why this whole exercise is going on.
You can watch Ian Hannamansing's full interview with Imran Khan tonight on The National, on CBC and CBC Gem. Venezuela's oil boom in Venezuela may have faded, but its other major export, beauty, never waned. The South American country is the undisputed frontrunner of international pageants. This year, Sofia Salomon wants to do what no other contestant has and become the first transgender woman to compete in Miss Venezuela. The committee has received her application. Now the waiting begins. Mandy Sham has the story.
It may not be Venezuela's national anthem, but it's pretty close. For more than 7 decades, the Miss Venezuela beauty pageant has sewn its way into the tapestry of national identity. But just like the theme music through the years, the framework of femininity hasn't changed much.
Por la belleza, la relevancia.
Like so many Venezuelan girls, Sofia Salomon grew up watching the annual pageant, how its contestants captivated the world with grace and glamour, even as political and economic upheaval shook the core of the nation.
Around 3 out of every 4 Venezuelans now live in extreme poverty.
The socioeconomic situation of Venezuela is like a very thin thread that could break.
With Venezuela still deep in crisis, the pageant is more than just a crown. It is the promise of a brighter future, a career secured in entertainment or even politics. And few people understand that better than Salomon.
It's a great platform, it's a great opportunity to influence many people with my example. And if you can dream, you can do it.
Salomon knows not all dreams were made equal. The 25-year-old transgender woman is vocal about the systemic challenges faced by gender and sexually diverse people in her home country. Venezuela currently does not legally recognize trans and non-binary people, and the government holds no obligation to prevent discrimination in workplaces and public institutions. If Salomon is accepted into the competition, she wants to use her platform to advocate for her community.
I want to tell the world to the reality of the woman transgender in my country, Venezuela.
Data from the Venezuelan Observatory on LGBTQ violence found nearly 100 cases of violence against gender and sexually diverse people last year. It warns many more cases go unreported. Yendri Velázquez co-founded the initiative, which aims to document harms against the community, including trans people.
The reality at the street is deeply violent, it's deeply transphobic. There is every day different forms of discrimination in every space.
Velázquez says intolerant attitudes within families perpetuate fear in many LGBTQ youth that they will be shunned not just from society, but from those closest to them. He says seeing Salomon participate in one of the most revered cornerstones of Venezuelan culture would send a message of tolerance and inclusion, and it would break the paradigm of heteronormative beauty standards.
The social pageants in Venezuela occupy a very important part of the collective imaginarium. It's like a reference for young people, and that there include a transgender woman would be a very important change.
Since I was in kindergarten, I wanted to wear a dress.
David Garcia is Mexican, Canadian, and gender fluid.
I want to dress up as a Española flamenco with a flamenco dress. But then, I was raised as a boy.
He's the director at Latino group Hola, a nonprofit organization for LGBTQ people of Latin American origin or heritage in Toronto. Garcia says what Salomon is doing is both powerful and necessary amid a recent wave of extreme conservatism and hate.
This struggle also happens in the United States or even here in Canada. We still have to do lots of work and fight any kind of discrimination.
Garcia says LGBTQ refugees from Latin America are often running for their lives. And when facing the immigration process in Canada, they're obligated to relive their trauma. Salomon says what she wants to share with the world is that daily reality. She wants laws enacted and misconceptions about trans people broken. While being on Venezuela's biggest stage won't make that happen right away, she knows her message will resonate.
The most important in the world is the love. The love.
Mandy Sham, CBC News, Toronto.
After a 3-year delay caused by the pandemic, the North American Indigenous Games are getting underway. Teams from across the continent are in Halifax for a week of sport, culture, and celebration. It's the largest multi-sporting event to be held in Atlantic Canada. More than 5,000 teenage athletes will compete in the Games. Jerry Benoit is the head coach of Team Ontario's under-14 boys basketball, and he says the Games are hugely important for the young Indigenous participants.
The thing about this is it's not about medals and stuff like that people think. It's about the experience. So, for example, a once-in-a-lifetime experience for you and your sibling to walk into an opening ceremonies on national TV in front of your family is more memorable and weighs more forever moving forward than any medal can. It's those experiences that we're trying to create for Indigenous youth.
Traditional sports include archery, box lacrosse, and kayaking, with events starting tomorrow and through the week. This is The World This Weekend on CBC Radio. I'm James Murray. You can listen to this program anytime on the CBC Listen app or on the CBC News YouTube channel. Starting Mondays, you can download a special curated edition of the program featuring our favorite stories from the weekend. Lionel Messi is getting a grand welcome to Major League Soccer. The Argentinian World Cup champion has inked a 2-year deal with Inter Miami worth tens of millions of dollars. The club will officially introduce Messi tonight at an event at its stadium in Fort Lauderdale. The 36-year-old is considered one of the greatest footy players ever and will certainly be a major boost to Inter Miami, which is currently ranked last in the Eastern Conference of the MLS. A battle of the ages became a battle for the ages today in London at Wimbledon. A 16-year age difference separated Spain's Carlos Alcaraz and the veteran Serb Novak Djokovic. 20-year-old wonder kid Carlos Alcaraz defeated Djokovic, who hadn't lost on the tournament's fabled center court in a decade. Youth won the day and the Wimbledon trophy in a 5-set thriller. For more on just how Carlos Alcaraz pulled it off, we reached out to our freelance reporter Ed Kleiman, and I spoke with him earlier. Ed, let's start with the match itself and what Carlos Alcaraz did to win it.
Carlos Alcaraz managed to do everything that he possibly could have needed to do to win this match. It took everything he had: his speed, his touch, his power, most importantly, his mental toughness. Novak Djokovic came out in this match and did what Novak Djokovic Always does. Strong starter, 6-1, rolls over Alcaraz. He's got a 45-match winning streak on center court, does Novak Djokovic. Hadn't lost since 2013. And it seemed like it's just going to happen again. But in the second set, Alcaraz dug in. He managed to squeak out a tiebreaker, carried his momentum into the third set, rolled to that one 6-1, withstood a Djokovic comeback in the fourth set. And then in the fifth set, Alcaraz actually played his best tennis, got an early break and managed to hold his nerve right through to the end, was really poised serving it out, and was fully deserving of this title.
Now, Djokovic, despite today, already owns a piece of men's tennis history with the most Grand Slam wins of any male in the Open era. But today, he was going for something much more, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this guy, every time he takes the court, is making history. And he was looking to become the all-time greatest Grand Slam champion, male or female, by going up to catch Margaret Court. And the one thing that Novak Djokovic wants more than anything else in tennis at this late stage of his career is the calendar year Grand Slam, the Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and US in the same year. He came very close 2 years ago, all the way to the US Open final and lost it. And it looked like maybe he could do it again. Well, again, that pressure is huge on him as well. And I think Alcaraz managed to kind of say, you know what, from the future, from here on out, if you're going to do any kind of Grand Slam wins, they're coming through me. This is my time.
Now, Alcaraz went into this tournament as the world #1 player. He won the tournament. Looking ahead at the competitions still to come, the Canadian Open, the U.S. Open ahead, is he, at age 20, now the top dog that people will be trying to beat? Has he become Djokovic?
I think it's fair to say he is the guy to beat. A long way to go to become truly Djokovic.
Fair.
And Djokovic is going to try to still have a lot to say about that. And that's what makes this so much fun. I think we have this interesting rivalry, a 36-year-old and a 20-year-old. New generation, established generation. But clearly, the reality is that Carlos Alcaraz has arrived. He's already going into the U.S. Open as the defending champion. He's managed to meet every challenge thrown at him. Let's not forget, he barely had played on grass at all, the toughest surface to make the adjustments to, against the all-timer in Djokovic, and he figured it out in a short period of time. He's, if he stays healthy, only going to get better and better, stronger and stronger. So, yeah, I think he's the guy everyone's looking at. Djokovic knows he's got a big challenge with, as we've mentioned, time not on his side. It makes for a fascinating little period here in men's tennis.
Well, we've enjoyed that, and I've enjoyed this. Thanks for this.
Thanks for having me on.
One of the curious things about human lives, one of the enduring mysteries of being us, is that you're never really sure what you'll end up being known for to your friends and loved ones. If you're well known, what you're known for to the world. A case in point. In the 1960s and 70s, the actress Jane Birkin was known for, well, acting in movies like Blow Up and Death on the Nile. She was known for whispering and singing too, like in this hit song of the day, Je t'aime moi non plus, her duet with her on-again, off-again love, Serge Gainsbourg. She had a way about her. Jane Birkin had a career. Then one day she gets on a plane, and on that plane she complains, as we do on planes, to the person sitting near her. One of the things she complains about, women's handbags. Too small, she said, to get the job done. Jane Birkin continues the story in an interview with CNN.
I was sitting next door to a man on a plane. He was very sweet because I let my agenda, my diary, and a lot of other stuff onto the ground. And he said, really, you should have a diary with a pocket on the inside to keep all these photos and all the mess I've usually got. And he said, well, draw it for me. And so I drew it on one of those sick bags, the vomit bag in the aeroplane.
That's right, she drew it on a sick bag and gave it to Hermes, who would go on to make not just a bag, but the bag. Jane Birkin had helped invent the Birkin bag.
Guys.
Hard to get. Some people wait years, cost a lot. Those that can afford them glow. And speaking of them, Drake has more than a few of his own.
I'm a fan of Hermes, Birkins, and it was one of those things that, you know, I just started collecting as well for, I guess, like the woman that I end up with one day.
He has something to offer. Jane Birkin has died at age 76. but not before living a life filled with activism, campaigning for Amnesty International and for AIDS research and against AIDS discrimination. She modeled, she sang, she had style. And of course, there's the Birkin bag, big enough to hold whatever life throws at you. And that's our bag of tricks for this summer Sunday. We'll leave you tonight with a little more of Jane Birkin's music. Here's her song, Dee-Doo-Dah. You've been listening to The World This Weekend. I'm James Murray. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Je crève ceux qui essaient de m'embrasser. Les autres filles se posent pas de questions. Elles courent les roues et les dancing et les garçons.
Good show, James. I think so too.